I see no reason why many universities shouldn't have their own university-specific puzzle hunt. In fact, I don't see a reason why every university shouldn't have their own university-specific puzzle hunt. So my name is Josephine. I am a grad student in the combinatorics and optimization department. So I first became involved with Key Clues in the first iteration, actually. I participated as part of a team the very first time it ran, and then I participated with a slightly different team the second time it ran. And after my team solved all of the puzzles from that iteration, I received an email asking if I was interested in organizing this most recent hunt. This was the first time I'd ever designed puzzles of this type, and I really enjoyed the experience. I'm going to talk about Found Out Kitchener, which was the first of the puzzles I ever wrote. So we were told pretty early on that one of the main themes for the puzzle hunt was going to be Waterloo information. And I really like to read, and I really like books, and a lot of puzzles you need, numbers and letters in specific arrangements to sort of extract the answer. And I thought call numbers from a library would be a nice way to sort of just get strings of letters and numbers you could manipulate. So the entire puzzle was based on the idea that I wanted to somehow use call numbers. The original idea didn't involve all of the authors or illustrators of the books being connected to Waterloo itself. That sort of happened because I was in the library database. I knew I wanted to use call numbers, but I didn't really have any other plan. And so I started typing things into the search bar. And the fewer ideas I had, the more ridiculous things I typed. And I think at some point I typed, "Where am I?" And I found this book, and I realized that it was actually by someone from University of Waterloo. And that was the point where I was like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if everybody was from University of Waterloo? But that was more just happenstance of good luck than true design. So if I were given this puzzle, my first thought would be, it kind of looks like there's a list of books, and then I see some titles and presumably author names. And the titles all look wrong. Like, these are just not sane titles for books. Maybe a few of them could work, but a lot of them don't make a whole lot of sense. Looking at them, the first one that seems like I might be able to do something with it is the 12th in, Waste or Lemon, and then it says Rupee. And Rupee seems like a relatively unique name. So if I went onto the internet and I just searched like author Rupee, someone is going to come up because it's relatively unique, and I can sort of look at what books she's written. And the very first one says Milk and Honey. And Milk and Honey and Waste or Lemon seem sort of opposite in some sense. So I'm going to just assume that I found the right answer, especially because Milk has 4 letters and has 3 and Honey has 5. So this has the right number of letters for each word, and it's sort of opposite. And that sort of gives me a method I can maybe use to try and solve the rest of these. And I still don't know what to do with the books at the top, but I have this sort of method. Some of these seem maybe easier than others. For example, evens start. I feel like odd is probably the opposite of even. So I'll try odds, and the opposite of start should be end. And those sort of match in terms of length. So I can continue sort of trying to figure out what I think the opposite of certain things might be. And sort of last, well, opposite's probably first. It's not maybe as immediately clear what the opposite of water is going to be. But at some point I realized, okay, well, there must be a way I can get more information. And the only one I'm completely sure about is Milk and Honey. So let's learn more about the author. So if I look at her, I can see she's Canadian, and I know that this is a University of Waterloo puzzle hunt. We'll just go on a hunch and figure out if she has anything to do with Waterloo. And I can see that she went to University of Waterloo. So maybe that's a way I can help find people faster. So it's a very handy page. Here we go. University of Waterloo, list of University of Waterloo people. And so I have some first names here. So we'll just see if we can find any. So let's try and mark. So there's 2 marks so far, 3 marks. So the first one seems maybe the most promising. So they wrote something. They're a lawyer and an author of a winner of a prize. So let me just figure out something about them. If I click on them, they wrote a book called Bush Runner. And Bush Runner does sort of seem to be the opposite of civilized walker, in the sense that bush is sort of a word that sometimes means the opposite of civilized, and runner and walker, much more obviously opposites. We'll go with that. And I could keep filling these in, and at some point I'm going to have most of these people's books figured out. Then I need to figure out what I'm going to do with this top piece of the page. So I've clearly got all these blanks at the spines, and I could try filling them in with the book titles that I found. So let's look at, if I put Bush Runner in, I just have too many blanks. And there's also this weird sort of spacing on the blanks with these bars on the books. And one thing I could observe is that every single one ends in 4 dashes. And one thing I can find is that every book has a publication year, and that's always going to be 4 digits. And so that might give me an idea that maybe what I'm looking for to fill in these is not going to be, say, the titles or the authors, but some other piece of information about a book. And this is where it is good to remember it's a University of Waterloo puzzle hunt. The University of Waterloo has a library database, and I can you know, search a book. So let's try published order. So here it is, and I can click on the book. I can say, okay, well, what other information might I find about the book? So we can see that this book actually is in Dana Porter Library. When I look at the fact that it's in Dana Porter Library, it tells me sort of the location, and then it has this long number here, and this is the call number, and this would tell me exactly where and how to find the book. And you can see based on this period that it's broken up into segments. And I can see that the call number fits directly into the blanks with the lines sort of marking where the separation between pieces of the call number are. So I can fill in all of these call numbers, and then I'm going to have all of these boxed pieces of the call numbers in order. So once I've filled out sort of all of the book titles and I found all their call numbers, I notice that there's a boxed letter or number from each of these, and there's 2 blank books. So this sort of gives me 3 segments of information, and they look like another call number because it ends in a year. So if we go to the library database, there's this advanced search feature, and it's, you know, any field contains whatever. And if I click on any field, the call number is a search option. So I can enter the call number, and I'm going to enter this in the segments that I have. And if I search this, I get exactly one option. Where am I? Why we can find our way to the moon, but get lost in them all. And this looks really nicely like these blanks here at the bottom. So I can fill this in. So where am I? Which seems like sort of potentially a very useful question. It's a very long title, but we'll see that the word mall is boxed. It says, here you are. So we're in a mall, but the question is now, which mall? Because there's a lot of malls in the world. And this is where maybe the title of the puzzle comes in. Because Found Out Kitchener doesn't necessarily seem like it makes the most sense in relation to anything else we've done. But each of these words does still have an opposite. So we're gonna do the same thing we did to the book title. I'm gonna say that the opposite of found is probably lost. The opposite of out is in. The opposite of Kitchener, depending on your definition of opposite in this sense, is probably Waterloo. And because this is a University of Waterloo puzzle hunt, that sort of makes the most sense. So if we're lost in Waterloo and we're in a mall, well, there's really only one mall in Waterloo, so we're in Conestoga. So the answer to the puzzle is Conestoga.